Hare Krishna. Welcome to our evening Chaitanya Charitamrita reading. And we are expecting Malati Mataji, Malati Prabhu. She said she will join and give a short, a brief pastime of Srila Prabhupada, and then we can continue with reading. So while we are waiting for her, maybe we can do the prayers. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya, no? Okay. Hare Krishna, Malati Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Malati Mataji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Nice to see all of you.
So some of them I think will join soon. So the way we do is we say prayers first and then start reading. So how should we begin?
Just like you normally do.
Okay.
It's always good to begin with some prayers, some pranams.
Yes. So maybe we can do like a one-time Prabhupada Pranam Mantra on Mridanga and Kartal. Will you lead, Malati Prabhu?
Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskacha Desatarane, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Sri Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpa tarubhischa kripa sindhuvayirya chapatitanam pavanabhyo Vaishnave namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Also, I want to ask for prayers for a departed Vaishnav. I don't know, Archana, if you ever knew Sureshwar from New Vrindavan.
Yes.
So he left his body today, this morning. He had gotten a heart attack, I believe, and they had to airlift him to Morgantown, and they found blockages in his heart, 2 blocked valves and a tear. So they were making the repair on the 2 blocked valves, but the tear was required something different. And during that procedure, he had what seemed like a stroke, and they put him under life support, but it became apparent that it wasn't really probably something he would pull out of, and his family made the decision. So very nice devotee, and please offer prayers. And anyway, from my point of view, Radha Vrindavan and Chandra are definitely keeping their eye and attention on him. But
is this Sureshwar Prabhupada disciple?
No, Sureshwar, he was from India. Tall fellow. Oh, he was old. He didn't look that old, but actually he was over 80. And he was Pujari. Tall fellow.
Yeah, I'm not able to recollect now.
I'll send you photo
Yeah.
Afterwards. But
Yes.
just because it recently happened, prayers of the Vaishnavas are very much welcomed and wanted at all times.
Yeah. So we would like to welcome Her Grace Malati Prabhu to this platform of kids Srimad Bhagavatam, and we meet every morning for Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita reading, and we have maybe about a dozen families, and it's mothers, in some cases fathers also, and children. So they take turns, we all take turns reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita shloka in the morning. And we are all very happy to have Malati Prabhu here. She is one of the earliest disciples of Srila Prabhupada and who has been serving Srila Prabhupada's mission tirelessly over all these decades. And I'm just one of the many, many souls in women bodies, especially, who have gotten shelter, in Malati Prabhu. We don't get to get close association with sannyasis and gurus, but Malati Prabhu is a blessing for all of us. We can get association of Malati Prabhu, even though, we may not be able to get close association with our spiritual masters. I feel very, very blessed that Malati Prabhu is here. I request everyone to please take this opportunity of getting her association and let the nectar of Srila Prabhupada's Katha enter into
I'm actually on this call so that I can get your association of all of you, including the children.
And please, if possible, you can keep your cameras turned on. Please. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see Madhav's. I don't see
They're,
Madhav.
they're all sitting here. Just turn on your
I
camera.
see his name and I see Isha's name, but the only one I'm seeing is Rasapriya.
Isha is, yeah, turn on your camera.
And Medha and Priyanka Raj, I don't see them.
Yeah. So Priyanka is a new mother. She has a baby 4 or 5 months old. And here is Usha and her daughter Medha. They're all, yes. So if possible, please keep your cameras turned on. And yeah, over to you, Malati Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Well, I will just, what I thought was, when I can join, I will. And because sometimes my schedule may not allow it. But instead of dominating the entire session, I will just give one pastime or two. And I also like to hear Chaitanya Charitamrita. And since it's Gauranga Mahaprabhu's upcoming appearance day, it's a good beginning to prepare ourselves for his advent. Actually, that being said, I will maybe mention to you the first time celebrating Mahaprabhu's appearance day, which was in 1967 as a society. Because before that, we were only incorporated in 66 in July. So we didn't, as a society, we weren't existing previously. But now in 67, we had New York, the little storefront temple. We had San Francisco, another little storefront temple. And we had somewhat of a society. It was known as International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and that was really bewildering because only these two little places with really small little, these storefronts. And one time Prabhupada was asked, why do you have these storefronts? And he just looked and told them the truth, because they're cheap. It means we can afford them, because we didn't have a large following at that point, So that was one thing. But in two things happened on Gur Purnim in 1967. One thing was, it was our first kind of big fast, because we hadn't had, like the year before on Janmashtami in 66 was the first initiation. The second initiation was 15 days later on Radhastami. But there hadn't been, it was a little bit, the fasting was there if you could or would, but it wasn't like institutionalized because we weren't an institution yet. But so this Gur Purnim was the first time it was brought up for fasting. But Srila Prabhupada also knew that it wasn't part of our upbringing, and it may be somewhat difficult. So he said that, we should fast until sunrise. But if that's not possible, then you can take a little fruit juice or some fruit. And then he said you could take some sugar candy. So I think you know what the sugar candy from India, what is the name, Archana Bhakti?
Lozenge.
Misty.
Oh,
No, it's like the chunks like what Srinathji would get.
right.
Those
Yeah.
little
Mishri. Yeah.
Yeah, mystery. So, but we didn't know that. But he said it's sugar and water. So we had these sweets you could buy at the store. They were called Life Savers, and they had different flavors, but one was a multi-flavor pack, and it was just sugar, water, and a flavor. So I thought, okay, we can take these, and I brought some Life Savers to the temple, which was very appropriately named. And that was our first attempt at fasting together, was on Gur Purnim. But the other thing that happened on that day was had ramifications that are ongoing until today. And that was the installation of Lord Jagannath. So he had been carved, the figures had been carved by Shyam Sundar, and now they were being ready to be worshipped. But you have to understand that in those days, everything was super simple. So the deities were only wearing their wooden painted clothes. There was not extra garments on them. No crowns, no dresses, no chatters, not even a peacock feather for Lord Jagannath. But nonetheless, they were enthusiastically received. You might be surprised to know we didn't even have a ghee lamp. We didn't even know what a ghee lamp was. Srila Prabhupada told us to just put some candles on a round plate or any kind of plate, and everybody present, they could offer the candles like we'd pass the plate around, and incense. No matter what happened in those days, tons of incense would be burnt to the point there would be some kind of cloud in the air. And the method of the installation was just those things, offering the incense, offering the candles, and most importantly, the very enthusiastic chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And we had invited anybody we would see, we'd say, God is coming to our temple, on this such and such a date. And on the actual date, we were out in the street, come to our temple. God is going to be here and you can see him. So we were not shy about approaching people, telling them, come and see God. And the result was we had a packed temple. I couldn't hardly sit down. And the altar was not an altar as we may recognize it today. If you check images 1967 Jagannath San Francisco, you'll get an idea of what I mean. So Shyam Sundar was told by Srila Prabhupada that should be a raised platform. So we had a very tall ceiling. So it was raised like you had to get on a ladder to get up there. It was very much raised. He said there should be lights. So he got these lights, 3 lights, one for each deity. And he put a little element in which caused them to blink on, blink off. And the lights were yellow, red, and blue in color, in different colors. And he told us there should be a canopy. So the Shyam Sundar had made a frame for the canopy. And Prabhupada said the cloth should be blue with gold trim. So Jamuna and Harsharani, they were the ones who were quite competent to sew. They covered this canopy and put on some gold fringe. So the basic elements were there, but the main element was just wonderful enthusiasm by the devotees and all the guests. And the thing I remember more than anything was during the chanting, everybody was just looking up. Nobody was looking to see what anybody else was doing. All eyes and attention were on Lord Jagannath. I think like for the guest, it was just such an amazing, surreal situation. Like we're saying, here's God, and they're just looking, what about us, you know, seeing this beautiful form of Jagannath and having been told this is Krishna. And knowing Krishna is God, yes, Jagannath is Krishna, he's God. But we never doubted that. It just came quite easily to us. We were ready to accept whatever Prabhupada was offering to us. And certainly accepting Lord Jagannath as God was part of that. It was a very wonderful occasion. So the chanting was going on, and I happened to notice Janaki, who was right in front of me. Janaki was the first initiated female disciple of Srila Prabhupada, initiated along with her husband Mukunda in that first initiation in New York City on Janmashtami of '66. So I saw tears just like literally going down her face, just like going and going. So I looked at her like, you know, you couldn't speak anything because the kirtan was so overwhelming, but I kind of looked, and then she goes, he's here, he's really here, he's here. And referring to Jagannath, of course, and that was really, in her simplicity, she was speaking a very profound fact. Lord Jagannath was really there, and Lord Jagannath was Krishna, and now he was there for us to worship and honor in our very neophyte state. There was no question of brahmanas. Nobody at that point had been given Brahminical initiation because we were just a few minutes old in our spiritual life, which is, I had been initiated on the 17th of January, and I think the date of this was the 26th of March. So there was a real, later on, we could really understand what mercy this was, to be allowed to worship Lord Jagannath when we ourselves were just without any prior history or any prior qualification. It was purely on the mercy of Lord Jagannath and Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So
I also feel that, you know, the devotees that came to Srila Prabhupada then, they were also not ordinary devotees. Srila Prabhupada said that they were sent to him by his spiritual master to assist him. So that's why, you know, I think it's like Prabhupada says, gold ring with a diamond combination. So perfect spiritual master and perfect disciples, you know.
well, he also said, just to put a little context, we were sent by his spiritual master to assist him. He goes, this is, but I required first-class men, but I have only received fifth-class men. What can I do? Referring indirectly and directly to our really fallen status, you know. But what can I do? He did. He lifted us up. And if anybody fell, which we did, it wasn't his fault. It was our own inadequacies.
Thank you so much. So we are so grateful. Hare Krishna. So as I mentioned before, the meeting usually ends after 40 minutes. So if that happens, just log back in and we'll continue reading. So we started yesterday reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We started with the introduction. So the introduction is a lecture, 5 morning lectures on Chaitanya Charitamrita, delivered by Srila Prabhupada in New York City from April 10th to April 14th, 1967. So we will continue with the introduction. Okay. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila
Ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. So, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, introduction, continuation. The Chaitanya Charitamrita teaches that the spirit soul is immortal and that our activities in the spiritual world are also immortal. The Mayavadis, who hold the view that the absolute is impersonal and formless, contend that a realized soul has no need to talk. But the Vaishnavas, devotees of Krishna, contend that when one reaches the stage of realization, he really begins to talk. So the Mayavadis say that if you are a realized soul, there is no need to talk. Whereas the Vaishnavas say that you actually begin talking after you reach the stage of realization. Quote, previously we only talked of nonsense, unquote. The Vaishnavas say, now let us begin our real talks, talks of Krishna. In support of their view that the self-realized remains silent, the Mayavadis are fond of using the example of the water pot, maintaining that when a pot is not filled with water, it makes a sound, but that when it is filled, it makes no sound. But are we water pots? How can we be compared to them? A good analogy utilizes as many similarities between the two objects as possible. A water pot is not an active living force, but we are. Ever silent meditation may be adequate for a water pot, but not for us. Indeed, when a devotee realizes how much he has to say about Krishna, 24 hours in a day is not sufficient. It is the fool who is celebrated as long as he does not speak, for when he breaks his silence, his lack of knowledge is exposed. The Chaitanya Charitamrita shows that there are many wonderful things to discover by glorifying the Supreme. In the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes, quote, I offer my respects to my spiritual masters, unquote. He uses the plural here to indicate the disciplic succession. He offers obeisances not to his spiritual master alone, but to the whole parampara, the chain of disciplic succession, beginning with Lord Krishna himself. Thus, the author addresses the Guru in the plural to show the highest respect for all his predecessor spiritual masters. After offering obeisances to the disciplic succession, the author pays obeisances to all other devotees, to the Lord himself, to his incarnations, to the expansions of Godhead, and to the manifestation of Krishna's internal energy. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sometimes called Krishna Chaitanya, is an embodiment of all of these. He is an embodiment of all of these. He is God, Guru, devotee, incarnation, internal energy, and expansion of God. He is God, Guru, devotee, incarnation, internal energy, and expansion of God. As his associate, Nityananda, he is the first expansion of God. As Advaita, he is an incarnation. As Gadadhar, he is the internal potency. And as Srivas, he is the marginal living entity in the role of a devotee. So this is the Panchatattva, the Lord appearing in 5 forms. As the expansion, as incarnation, as the internal energy, as a devotee, and of course, as the Lord himself, that is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus, Krishna should not be thought of as being alone, but should be considered as eternally existing with all his manifestations, as described by Ramanujacharya. In the Vishishtadvaita philosophy, God's energies, expansions, and incarnations are considered to be oneness in diversity. In other words, God is not separate from all of these. Everything together is God. Actually, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is not intended for the novice, for it is the postgraduate study of spiritual knowledge. Ideally, one begins with the Bhagavad Gita and advances through Srimad Bhagavatam to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Although all these great scriptures are on the same absolute level, for the sake of comparative study, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is considered to be on the highest platform. Every verse in it is perfectly composed. In the second verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the author offers his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. He compares them to the sun and the moon because they dissipate the darkness of the material world. In this instance, the sun and the moon have risen together. Usually we see sun in the day and moon at night. But when Gaur Nitai appeared, both sun and moon arose at the same time. In the Western world, where the glories of Lord Chaitanya are relatively unknown, one may inquire, who is Krishna Chaitanya? The author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, answers that question in the 3rd verse of this book. So what is the question? Who is Krishna Chaitanya? Generally, in the Upanishads, the supreme absolute truth is described in an impersonal way. But the personal aspect of the absolute truth is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, where we find the following verse. Aditi Lata Mataji, you raised your hand?
Yes, Mataji, I have a question. Mataji, one doubt I have.
Okay.
So what is the difference between incarnation and expansion?
Yes. So expansion is the direct expansion of the Supreme Lord. So like you have from Lord Krishna, first expansion is Balaram. And then Balaram expands into Chaturvyuha, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, like that. So these are expansions. So incarnations would be the Lord appearing. You have different incarnations within the universe. In this material world, the Lord appears. You have the Guna avatars, right? The Lord incarnating as the qualitative incarnations, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva. You have Leela avatars, right? and you have a Manvantara avatar. So these are all various incarnations. So they can be either the personal expansions who are coming as incarnations. So when you say incarnation is someone who's descending from the spiritual world to the material world. Avatar, that is an incarnation. So who's coming? You're in mute, Aditi Latam.
Yeah, in this case, can you again share, Mataji, which you were saying that who is incarnation and
Who is
who is
expansion?
expansion?
Lord Nityananda Prabhu is expansion.
Hmm.
Advaita Acharya is an incarnation because Advaita Acharya is also Lord Sadashiva.
Shiva, yes. Shiva and Prahlad Maharaj, I believe, right?
Mahavishnu.
Oh, Shiva and Mahavishnu. And who else is expansion?
Only expansion is Nityananda Prabhu.
Incarnation is Advaita Acharya and who?
Internal energy is Gadadhar Pandit, who is Srimati Radharani.
Radharani.
And marginal, the living entity as a devotee is Srivas Thakur.
Narad Muni, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Srivas.
Got it, Mataji. Thank you so much.
So we'll. Malati Prabhu, would you like to read? I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, I prefer you to carry on. Thank you very much. And that was a very good answer. It was very clear.
Thank you. So we'll continue. Okay, so the question is, who is Lord Chaitanya? So quoting from Sri Ishopanishad. Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattvam pushan an apavrinu satya dharmaya drishtaye. Quote, O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Unquote. Sri Ishopanishad, text 15. The impersonalists do not have the power to go beyond the effulgence of God and arrive at the personality of Godhead, from whom this effulgence is emanating. The Ishopanishad is a hymn to that personality of Godhead. It is not that the impersonal Brahman is denied. It is also described, but that Brahman is revealed to be the glaring effulgence of the body of Lord Krishna. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we learn that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. In other words, Sri Krishna Chaitanya is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. The Paramatma or Super Soul, who is present within the heart of every living entity and within every atom of the universe, is but the partial representation of Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, being the basis of both Brahman and the all-pervading Paramatma as well, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As such, he is full in 6 opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. In short, we should know that he is Krishna, God, and that nothing is equal to or greater than him. There is nothing superior to be conceived. He is the Supreme Person. Yes, so we have less than a minute before the meeting ends. So should we end the meeting here because it is 7 o'clock? Or would you want me to read for another 10-15 minutes, as you say?
We can read, Mataji.
I will have to take leave because I have an ongoing assignment.
Yes,
but
yes.
Thank you very much. And when I'm able to, I will certainly join because the CC is such nectar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malati Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.